start this recording. Yeah, it's recording in progress. So we'll just talk about things like this, and hopefully everybody who watches this broadcasts of sorts will be able to join the conversation and enjoy the conversation. I don't know what's going on with Reverend Jay. He wanted to be here as well, but it is midnight, so can't blame him too much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Three's alarm didn't go off.
Well, these things happen. Well,
Yeah.
So I remember one time when we were in, I don't remember, when was this? I know it was back in FECA days. I know it was back during our FECA days that one time we went to FECA Gwagwalada, and it was just hell. It was so hot. So I'm thinking about days like that now. I think Ben, you went with us when we went to, what was that? Kuje, was it?
I
Were you
don't
there?
remember, but it was mostly hot. We're always trekking.
Yes.
Under the
Went
sun.
for national convention at not national, went for zonal convention at Kuje, and it was super hot. I remember days like that. But it's during those times, one of the biggest things that we kept telling ourselves was that whether come rain or come sun, we'll continue to do the work of ministry. But then you say things like that, and God decides, okay, I'm gonna test you. Right? Because when you say things like that, that God is like, are you sure? Do you understand what you're saying? Ungwa, come let me chisel you so that you'll be ready for this work. Do you understand?
Yeah, really listen. That moment you can hear his knuckles cracking. So let's do this.
It's like, okay, let's do this. Reverend Emmanuel, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So,
but then once you pass that first few years, and he knows that, okay, the intent is there, then he puts you through a season of training and says, okay, now go into the field. Let me train you, teach you how, give you backbone and all of those things. Several years in the future, you will look back at those experiences and think, there was a reason for it, right? There was a reason for it. In my case, I sit back here now and think back to those like FECA days or just as Gary Key days when we're doing FCS, we're carrying FCS on our head. Now it makes sense how God was using those seasons to build specific things to bring us to where we are right now. Right? Even when sometimes you see those things and they're not the easiest to deal with. An analogy I like to use is thinking about playing music. I like playing music, and I play music with my like guitars. There's always a guitar in the office. Let me borrow that. There's always a ton of guitars in the office.
Wow.
Because I like to play music. I like to worship with my hands. But all of these came from specific small steps, right? I remember living in California. Well, I say living in. I was in California for a few months. I was homeless because I didn't have a place. I didn't have a house to stay in. I just had a small 1998 Toyota Camry that I won in a bet. It had
now you won it in a bet.
I did. I won it in a awesome. I won it in the bet because couldn't afford a car otherwise. But then I was sitting in this one car. Now, a Toyota Camry, this was a 92 Toyota Camry, so 2 doors, really small car. And the life cycle for that car is usually around 300,000 miles. It will run for 300,000 miles, and at that point, it might well be dead. This car had 210,000 miles, 310,000 miles on it. So it was way past its life expectancy, and it was serving as both my mode of transportation and my home.
Wow.
right? But then you like Ben, you remember those days, right? Like
Oh yes, they
when
were
I get
hell.
off of work and because I worked all night, I get off of work and I'm driving to school in the morning and I have to call Ben so that he will keep talking to me so I don't fall asleep.
Yeah, I remember those were terrifying.
Right? But people don't see those things. But those seasons, those are the things that will build you up for the real work that you're going to do going forward. Today I'm sitting here now, like I don't have to work night shifts. I haven't worked night shifts in a while. I don't have to work night shifts anymore. And making more money now than I did back then because God is just faithful. Now I'm able to do more in ministry. I'm able to go to more places, reach out to more people, serve more communities. But it's one little step at a time. Right now, there's a lot of pastors who are working diligently in their churches, in their small, where two or three are gathered. And it seems like that is it's a very difficult circumstance or a very difficult time to be working and living in. But God is using those small times, those small circumstances to build something phenomenal out of their lives. Right? God is using those small circumstances to build something phenomenal out of their lives, something phenomenal out of all of our lives. Right? We cannot look down on the days of little beginnings. Remember, we always talked about the days of little beginnings when JCM only had 2 people. And by 2 people, I mean me and Ben. That was it.
Yeah.
We were the length and breadth of all of this work. But then God starts adding people. We started the magazine. We were just using our Legady's bands to the length and breadth of Abuja. Today, life looks a little different.
Yeah. Hallelujah.
Right. And we sit where we are now, looking forward to what's coming in the next few years. I know the time is coming where ministers, people from JCM, pastors from JCM, or even pastors from JCM will raise people to be presidents of countries.
Wow.
Yeah. That's
like
the dream.
Ben, you remember when we talked with Abayomi Mighty, one of the things that we talked about then was that there is a congress of ministers who will form like a round circle and take positions, like strategic positions of authority in different governments. And just by interacting with each other, will pull the world to a specific God-centered future.
Yeah.
That's how this thing works. That's how this thing works. That's the whole purpose of JCM. The whole purpose of JCM is to empower Christian ministers and not necessarily pastors now. That's why I said for this meeting, let everybody bring your members, bring the leaders of your church, because this is beyond what just pastors will do. But there is a world that God is leading the church to, where the church controls not just religious power or supernatural spiritual power, but the church will also control significant academic, social, and governmental power. The Bible says when the righteous rule, the people flourish. People will flourish when the righteous are in control. But because the righteous, we just love to sit in our air-conditioned church halls playing music with all of the skilled musicians, and we allow the rest of the world to just be secular. I think the delineation, the separation of the church and the secular world, that was the biggest disservice the church could have done. To separate the sacred from the secular, that was a disservice to society.
Yeah.
And the result of that now is that there is a crisis of leadership in society.
Yes, sir.
The crisis of leadership is a direct product of what the church has done. It's the church's fault. And when I say a crisis of leadership, I'm not just talking about leadership in terms of spiritual or church-centric leadership. I'm talking about leadership entirely, in its entirety. Look at every field of human interaction, whether it is what's the word? Governmental. Whether it's governmental interactions, whether it is political power, there is leadership that's supposed to be in all of these areas that people are losing out of. And that's why we're facing such difficulty in the world. Right? That's why we're facing such difficulty in the world. Look at a place like Nigeria. Nigeria ranks really incredibly high in corruption. That's a crisis of leadership because there are people who haven't learned to be servants of the people they serve. They call them civil servants or public servants, but they go out there and line their own pockets. That's a crisis of leadership. We don't really have a lot of leaders stepping into those places of authority, bearing the responsibility of leadership. They just want the authority without the responsibility because they don't understand what leadership is. Half of those people go to church.
Wow.
Yeah.
Right? Half of those people take the money that they they embezzled from work and pay 1/10 of that in church as tithes. The pastor doesn't know. Right? So these are not things that are novel. I'm not saying anything that's new. It's something that we all know, and it has become normal in today's society that leaders have no idea what they're doing. On the global stage, let's make this global because we have very global ministers sitting in the room, right? If we take this to the global stage, look at in the last 3 years, war in Ukraine, the Israel-Hamas war. And then there's the Houthis who are firing missiles on boats in the South Pacific, I think it is. And then there is the China-Taiwan conflict that's about to kick off. And once that happens, World War III is here. All of that is a crisis, is because of the crisis of leadership, where you have leaders who don't know what they're doing, making decisions that enrich their pockets and sells out their communities, right? These leaders, just by lining their own pockets, they sell out their countries and their communities. And by doing so, by ignoring their responsibilities as leaders, they plunge the entire world into war. Crisis of leadership. You know, they say that leadership has often been understood in terms of influence. So if you ask the average person, okay, what is leadership? If I know, I'm going to take 5 seconds, right? I'm going to take 5 seconds and say, everybody as they're sitting down there, answer to yourself, what is leadership? Now, I'm qualified to say this because I'm a student of leadership. I've been studying leadership for the past God knows how many years. I'm still studying leadership today. Well, my major research right now is in the field of leadership. Mostly Christian leadership, but I think I'm qualified to ask questions or to talk about this matter, right? Question is, while you're sitting down, what do you think leadership is? I can guarantee that 9 out of 10 people said something about influence. Right? Everybody will say something that sounds like leadership is being able to influence people and achieve goals. That's it. The leadership is some kind of influence over people to accomplish some kind of goals. But there is a major component of leadership that nobody really talks about. Leadership is the development of people and resources in pursuit of specific predetermined goals. Here's what's missing: the development of people. You have to serve people as they grow, investing in people, supporting people, encouraging people, building those people so that they have the skills necessary to grow. And as those people grow, they will build systems, because healthy people build healthy systems to accomplish healthy organizational goals. In JCM, like we're a team, right? This team that is JCM, we have an overarching vision, so an overarching goal. We're to help develop people everywhere so that those people being developed will go out and do the work of ministry. Got it. Beautiful. That's the job. The people within the team, then, it is my responsibility to pour into them so that they are the very best versions of themselves, because we need to run a healthy organization to help those people in society become healthy.
Yes, sir.
So if I'm not helping Emmanuel Agamalafia to be the healthiest version of himself possible, I can't expect him to help anyone else where he serves to be the healthiest version of themselves. So leadership is primarily developing people.
Wow. Yes, sir.
See, that is the
I believe that in today's world, the idea of independence has been warped into this image of self-service, where people are focused intently on just what they can get for themselves without necessarily caring about what other people need. And it's suddenly okay for you to not care what happens to other people in pursuit of what you need. And I think then this sort of idea is being pushed so powerfully that people find it sort of strange to consider that their lives should be in some part lived for someone else other than themselves. That even the idea of sacrifice is such an alien idea to them. It's certainly a strange world we live in today.
Right. And that's absolutely the truth. Absolutely true. Like, think about it. You say that, okay, we expect that leaders, when they come into positions of authority or positions of leadership, like you become pastor of a church or you're head of a department in church, they expect that those leaders will now live selflessly and sacrifice for the group, or take on the responsibility for the group, or take an ownership for what happens within the group. However, that idea of sacrifice and giving of yourself for the group doesn't start when you become a leader. Servant leadership. So servant leadership is a theory of leadership. There's multiple different theories of leadership. One of them is servant leadership. Servant leadership is the idea that a leader is first of all a servant. Servant first leadership is what it actually is called. So the servant serves the people. The servant serves the organization. The servant serves the goals, right? So approaching leadership that way forces the leader to then submit themselves to their followers. And this is a kind of way that Jesus led. He's where we get the idea of servant leadership, because he gives of himself to serve the people that he is leading. Those people then give of themselves to serve the people that they're leading. And that's the way you build on leadership within the structure or the theory of servant leadership. However, servant leaders do not start being servants when they become leaders. Servant leaders are built on the fabric of servant followers. If you as a leader have not, first of all, learned how to be a servant, you will not understand how to be a leader who serves. Because servant leadership is not a leader first. Leadership is conferred. Servanthood is innate. What that means is leadership can be given to you. You can get the position. Now you're the senior pastor, or now you're the assistant pastor, or whatever it is, right? But servanthood is innate. It's inside. It's who you are. It's out of the abundance of who you are that you will then act in service to other people. And this shows up in every sphere of human interaction, whether it is family, whether it is government, whether it is economics. Because think about things like healthy everyday leadership. I know in JCM we talk a lot about everyday leadership. Healthy everyday leadership is you intentionally leading yourself in pursuit of better, right? Becoming a better you, moving your vision to the next level, moving your family to the next strength or the next level of glory, is spiritual leadership. How do you build and develop on yourself, building your faith through study, through prayer, through devotion, all of that stuff. Healthy everyday leadership starts inside with how you devote yourself to God. The foundation is your fellowship with God. You do not serve people, you serve God through people. Right? So as a pastor, you have a vision or a purpose in your church, but you're not serving the people in the church. You are serving God through the people in your church. Now, think of all of the different pillars of society that we talk about every time, right? Any of the pillars. So like faith, I just said with the church, you're not serving the members of the church. Even the members, you're not serving the pastor of the church. All of you are serving God through the body of the church, right? In family, you're not serving your parents, you're not serving your children, you're serving God through your children, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing is true in business. You run a business, you're not serving your clients, you're serving God through your clients. That way your business becomes a ministry. That way your family becomes a ministry. Your school becomes a ministry. We're going to have our own school in the near future. When that happens and we have Numa Industries or Numa University, all of that is still going to be serving God through our service to the people in our schools, our professors, our students, our trustees, all of those things. It's because we're serving God that makes our school a ministry. That makes your house a ministry. Influential leadership builds on servant leadership. Be a servant first. The influence will follow. Be a servant first. The influence will follow. And you guys, I have so much I want to talk to you guys about. Like, I can't wait for us to have Numa University to where we have classes. It will get to a point where people will get scholarships for people in Nigeria to get their visas and come to the US to come to our school. Spend 3 months here. Spend 3 months here, study.
Yeah.
And we'll do school differently than they do school here. Now, when you come out to our school here, you're in our campus. You're not going anywhere for 3 months. By the time you get home, you are smart. Do you understand? Like, you're not just brilliant. You're smart. Like, you understand how things work. You're not just coming here to learn the theologies of different things. Like, we can talk about a bunch of theologies. There's a bunch of Christology that plays into servant leadership, and we could talk about that. But there's more to it than just the theologies of it. There is the practicality of it. Like, practical theologies, like, if you know the concept, but you don't know how to apply the concept, you've not learned it.
That's usually the problem here. Is people having all this information and not being able to connect it to their actual lives, their actual experience. Yeah. So there's no actual manifestation of the belief systems like that. Right. And this, they have no way of seeing it themselves when they're incapable of expressing these belief systems, which I believe is usually the core of where the problems originate. It's you can't see what you're doing from the outside, from an objective perspective. Right. And people are usually encouraged to focus on what they believe is positive, which is usually what serves them better, what they feel better about, what they prefer things to be, what they actually are, and how they can change things into what they can be. And so I agree with you guys that these people need to learn to adapt what they believe to their realities.
So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to let you all go now, but I'm going to give you one assignment. For us tonight, this conversation is ending, but you have time to think about this. For everybody else, as you're listening to this and you're watching this video with all the three of us talking about these concepts, you can now take some time and talk amongst yourselves. Converse. How do we take the concepts of influential servant leadership and apply that to my specific sphere of influence. You have places where you have influence over people. You have children, you have co-workers at work, you have fellow members at the church, you have people that you're leading in your departments, all of those things. How do you take the concept of Christ-like leadership, leadership that is built on dedication to God, dedication to Christ? How do you apply that in your church? How do you apply that in your service? How do you apply that in the organization of your ministry? Right? Because if God is not, again, like I said, if God is not visible in your organization, you are doing something wrong. And if you know the concepts, but you do not apply the concepts, you have not learned it. So we've talked much about servant leadership and influential leadership and personal, successful, everyday leadership. It's all these things sound good. They're great and nice and they're academic sounding. But if you do not apply them, if you do not take specific steps, okay, what can I do today to apply these things into my own repertoire to become a better, stronger leader in society? Then you've not learned the concepts. I'm sorry. Today was a mistake. But I don't think it was a mistake because you've heard these things now. And if you have heard the truth, blessed are you if you do them. Okay?
Yeah.
I'm going to be present. While this airs, I'm going to be by my phone. Send me all your questions. I will answer. Okay? If you have questions, thoughts, concerns, shoot them up. The barcode is going to be on the screen somewhere. Just leave it up. Just leave the barcode up so that people can go onto our group on Facebook. Send your questions in there. I will respond to them. Let's talk more about how the church today can be more effective taking the gospel to the ends of the earth. All right. Thanks you guys for staying up and talking with me.
It was a pleasure.
Pastor.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And stop recording.